All right, we're going to get to the comeback player of the year here.
God.
First, kick it off, and we all went the same. Joe Burrow.
I don't even think it's questionable for this.
I don't
No
want
Aaron
to hear.
Rodgers
I don't
left?
want to hear anything about Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to hear.
Now, what do they make
Kirk
it?
Cousins is
I was like, Kirk Cousins should be in that running
He's
as
in
well.
the conversation. Nobody's doing it like Joe Burrow right now.
Yeah.
Here's some injuries, though. I need a doctor to weigh in on how like serious Joe Burrow's injury was from like a threatening
Come on, the
standpoint.
wrist?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like an Achilles on your plant leg as a quarterback
Could be a career ender.
is massive,
Could
right?
be a
To come back
career
from
ender.
that, whereas
Yeah.
it was a throwing wrist, but was it a throwing wrist that could like leave long-term impacts, or is it a throwing wrist that like,
You
hey,
just
once
leave it
it
right
heals,
there.
it
It's a
heals?
throwing wrist.
Yeah,
If the
that's
world's best pool player has a finger injury and then comes back and wins an
And it's on his
tournament,
throwing hand.
I'm going to say, damn, that was impressive. So for Joe Burrow to go out and do the things he's done, all things considered in Cincinnati, it's impressive.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because when you look at Joe Burrow, it's like year on, year off, year on, year off. Last
Yep.
year he got hurt. This year you expect him to have the numbers. The only issue has been their defense has struggled the first couple of weeks of the season and put them behind the 8 ball, which Cincinnati Bengals usually start off slow a little bit, but they kind of start off really slow
Yeah.
this year. And now like they don't really have that much margin for error, but they actually kind of do when you look at the landscape of the AFC. Like a lot of teams lost that helped them this past week. So like they're still in the thick of this thing in a way that Joe Burrow has been able to play. Like the movability in the pocket, right? The pocket presence. Nobody has better pocket presence in the NFL to me than Joe Burrow. You saw the mobility this last week versus the Las Vegas Raiders, him evading some rushers, stepping up, making some plays down the field. I mean, the guy has 20 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions, and it's thrown for nearly 2,300 yards already.
Crazy.
And yet they have a losing record.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? The thing that I love about him the most is his response to the noise.
Yeah,
And like
that's true.
this guy is so old school and so under the radar with it. You never know really what he's thinking. He never leads on too much
Yeah.
about what's going inside the building. He does it the right way. I think this is his second comeback player of the year. Am I right?
It
2021.
is. So,
Yeah.
there's been 2 in NFL history. One you guys won't get. It's Paul Lowe. One was in the mid 2000s though. Any guess on who it was? He played for the Jets.
Vinny
He
Testaverde?
played for the Dolphins as well. 1-1 with each team.
Oh, Chad Pennington.
Chad
That's
Pennington.
right. He had multiple injuries. Yep.
That was just out of my jurisdiction
Yeah.
But
in
yeah,
terms of fandom.
Burrow won it in 2021.
I think
I
was
mean,
going
he's
through puberty.
definitely on pace to win it again for a second time.
So I was there in Kansas City the year that Joe Burrow won it, and it was him and Jamar Chase just cooking the Kansas City Chiefs.
They're cooking everybody right now.
It kind of looked like that, bro. So keep your eyes peeled for this Bengals team.
Going back to the offseason, right? I thought the Browns team would be a lot better. I actually picked them to win the AFC North just because of the roster,
Yeah.
right? I just like if Deshaun just plays adequate football,
Yep.
their roster is better than
Yeah.
everybody else.
Sorry.
I knew the Ravens were going to be there. My biggest question mark was, could Burrow stay healthy? I was like, if he's healthy, then I have them in the playoffs.
This is an on
He's
year
not.
for him.
Yeah. And I should have known that, right? Because it's all on year for him. But the thing is, they
doing the
started
double
off so
dutch.
slow, and I'm like, see, maybe he still got the risk because like he didn't look good week 1 versus the Patriots.
And he was doing
And he was doing the thing with. I'm like, maybe the risk isn't there yet. See, this could be a bad year. Jamar Chase was not happy with his contract. T. Higgins.
questioning the severity of the
Yeah, I
injury.
mean,
it's still
it's-
bothering him week
Joe,
1.
It's Joe
obviously
Shiesty, man.
serious.
Joe Shiesty is Joe Shiesty. Macaulay Culkin is going to be there at the end of the year.
Chris Stapleton hurts his voice a little bit, comes back a couple months later, sings his ass off in a concert, and you say it's not that impressive. I say, the thrower's hand is pretty impressive. Like,
I'm not debating. I just want a doctor.
embrace
to
debate.
I want them to weigh in.
Let's get a doctor on the
Is the
phone.
risk that serious?
I want them
Yeah.
to weigh
If it falls
in.
off, can you still throw the football?
All right, let's get to offensive rookie of the year, where we can just say it's Jaden Daniels.
I don't even think
And
we have to discuss
Move on,
this
unless you
one.
want to make an argument for Caleb Williams.
let's say if it's not Jaden Daniels, who would it be?
That's a good.
Who would it be?
Let's get interesting here. Let's get weird.
I mean, I want to give some love to Joe Alt because I think he's been awesome.
Quietly,
Yeah.
great.
Tackle,
He's been good.
but he got hurt a little bit.
Yep.
I think Malik Neighbors has probably been the most impressive other rookie.
He's missed a couple games.
Drops.
Brian Thomas is a name, maybe.
Brian Thomas
for sure.
is probably the second most impressive wide
Dominic
receiver,
Pooney.
but like better numbers. Dominic Pooney's been great at guard.
Really
You don't
good.
give those awards.
You don't give those
offensive
awards to
linemen.
guards. Are
I
you
do.
not?
I would have to be
I-
dominant.
What are you
Like
calling me
they-
trash? I'm a person too. I'm a guard.
he'd have to be
We have
dominant.
lockers too, man.
I'm trying to. We at PFF we used to give offensive rookie of the years to O linemen. I'm trying to think who were
you
some that
didn't.
won. Larry Warford.
You didn't give it to me. Yeah, he got it my year, which
Yeah.
is bullshit. I'll call Larry right now. Larry.
Detroit Chicago rivalry.
He said, you took my flight to Hawaii. You got the Pro Bowl. And I'm like, well, I just found out you got the Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's bullshit. I'd rather have that.
Take that
out. I'll send you my jersey from the Pro Bowl.
Trying to think. There's other.
I love Warford. Great guy.
Yeah.
But we were willing to. NFL media, unfortunately, still behind the times. But gosh, who would you give to? Who was like, if it wasn't Jay Daniels, who would be the second?
To me, it would be Brian Thomas, probably.
Okay.
And the thing is, it's crazy. He only had 4 targets this last game versus the Eagles.
How about the center in
He's
Tampa?
been so.
Graham Barton.
That's a good one.
Awesome.
That's a good one.
I think.
Bucky Irvin maybe could be in that
out.
one.
Yeah, but he's been out. Yeah, everyone's like been impressive.
Barton's been good. Barton's been good. The
RBBC.
offenses had to change week to week with the injuries there. Liam Cohen's been awesome, but also as an OC, you got to be hand in hand with what your center can do, getting these plays started, getting guys on the right page. Graham Barton's been awesome. He was pissing people off the other night.
I bet.
I think BTJ is probably.
Yeah, I think Brian Thomas would probably makes the most sense.
Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Go ahead. 1, 2, 3. Jared Verse.
But you know somebody that's sneaky that nobody's talking about? Quinyon Mitchell.
Yep.
He's played really well in Philadelphia, man. And the thing is, he doesn't have the gaudy like interception numbers, but he's been tasked to essentially kind of take the number one guy out, right? I know that was Darius Slay's job, but he's kind of elevated his game. I mean, Cooper, the Gene has played amazing as well in the slot, but I think Quinyon Mitchell is a sneaky guy in the back half, especially if the Eagles keep winning. Because Versus really went on the tear like the last 3 weeks. Like he's been unblockable the last 3 weeks. But Quinyon has been steady Eddie the entire season.
Yeah, he had that one bad drive against the Falcons that kind of cost him that game at the very end. But outside of that,
played well.
I mean, as advertised,
correct.
CB1 type of play. And then since the bye, him and Cooper DeJean are just like
ridiculous. It looks bright in Philly in that secondary.
I mean, so everyone, and it was sometimes in the draft day, everyone was like, oh man, how he did it again. He got all these whatever. Sometimes it comes to fruition, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. This one came to
fruition. Oh, yeah, 100% right on this one.
Fangio, they're buying into the Fangio stuff up there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you look at this defense, I think like the last 5 weeks it's like number 2 in points per game and like number 1 in like every other category. So that's what I was trying to tell everybody. Like anytime you put a new system in, it's going to take a while to gel, get that continuity.
And as many rookies as they're trying.
And then Kellen Moore's offense too. I would say the same thing. Like people were concerned in the beginning of the year. I mean, obviously when AJ Brown's in the offense, it's totally different. And that's the big concern this week. We'll see if he's able to go. Either way, I think they beat Dallas with him or without him, just because Dallas has a lot going on this week. But AJ Brown, he can propel them in that rare air with the Detroit Lions, because right now Detroit is like Detroit. What does the shirt say? Detroit versus everybody.
Yep.
That's how it is right now in the NFC.
So with the scheme stuff, we're talking about these rookies and adapting and then dominating. I think it's important to understand that when you become a rookie, you do the rookie orientation, you do spring, you do training camp, and then you have your first taste of preseason, then you get into the regular season. You never really figure out why you're doing what you're doing. You know what to do, right? Like,
exactly.
You know where to line up. Oh, I've got the number 2 here. But once you figure out why, you can start to play faster. You can play with that reckless abandon. And in Vic's system, I've seen it before. Young guys come on, and then at the end of the season, they have tremendous runs at it. And if the secondary in Philadelphia can keep it up, these guys are awesome. They're fun to watch.
To get back to Jared Verse a little bit, 39 pressures already, almost double the next closest rookie. He's been as impressive in the run game as he has been as pass rusher. His power and ability to just control blocks one-on-one is night and day from what you expect from a rookie. And now he was on the older side. He was the oldest.
24, right?
Yeah, he was the oldest defensive end in this class.
That's how old I was when I came up.
And sometimes you worry about those guys when they look stronger in college. It's like, are they still going to look stronger in the NFL? It's like, yeah, the dude has.
That was my question for him, because like I told you, my comparison was Khalil Mack, right? And people looked at me crazy, but I was like, the things that he was doing to offensive tackles in college, I was just literally, I was like, but I don't know if that's going to transcend to the next level. Now, what I did love is between his junior year and his last year, he really went and worked on his pass rush back, right? We saw more moves, him swiping outside hands downs and everything. I was like, okay, he worked on his pass rush. All right, that'll transcend to the next level. But the way he's been using his speed to power in the league,
elite.
Goodness
That's
gracious,
what I think of when I think
man.
about Khalil Mack.
That's
Speed
what I'm saying.
to power.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what my comparison was, because literally his junior year, it was all speed to power. And then he transcended to working on his pass rush game, and he got better with his hand usage. So what he's, like I said, what he's done the last 3 weeks, and it's not even just him, the way he's able to set up other guys, like Braden Fisk literally got 2 sacks because of Jared Verse this last week, right? Like, so it's setting up other defensive linemen. And that young D-line is going to be an issue for the next 3 or 4 years.
It is. And they all, I mean, so every guy they drafted the last 2 years can rush the passer, whether it's Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Braden Fisk, and then Verse.
Yep.
All those guys are ready. It's not like, oh, you know, maybe you see flashes. It's like, no, they're kind of doing it right now. So, yes, that Rams defensive line.
It's going to be nasty. And then what's the other guy? Holt, 97.
Hoekt.
Holt, yeah.
Yeah, I think he really holds the rest of that defensive line together, because he's a versatile piece that can move up and down the line.
Can we figure out how to pronounce his name?
We might need to. We don't want to disrespect him, man, because I love his game. And he's an undrafted free agent, so I love that as well.
It's not Torrey Holt. It's not Andy Heck. It's somewhere
like
between
Holt or something like that.
Hooked.
Let's see. Do I have it?
Do we have a pronunciation guide?
How do you spell it again?
Come on, Harry, help us out.
Isn't it Hoecht?
That's what I thought. Why is it not coming up on my
Just put Rams
on my Rams pronunciation?
Unless I'm completely off. Rams D line.
Dead air. We'll figure it out.
Okay, right. Next is the defensive player of the year, midseason version.
Yeah, let's do defensive player of the year, because this one's contested. I think Aiden Hutchinson was kind of pacing.
He was running away with it,
and then obviously,
Trey Hendrickson just kept going.
And Trey Hendrickson has kept going, but he's on one of the worst defenses in the NFL.
Which I give him even more credit.
Yeah,
you get the boost there. You get the boost. Okay, so Trey Hendrickson is mine, because production, when you look around, you're not having success. That's hard to come by. You've been in locker rooms before where you're struggling to find somebody to make plays.
Correct.
He makes plays week in, week out. The offensive side of the ball, Burrow, he's trying to match that production. He's getting there. Dexter Lawrence was.
I was like, Dexter Lawrence needs to be in there. I mean, their team is awful, but
the same argument there. You know, you show up and you just be a gladiator every single time you take the football field. That's how you earn respect. That's how you get national recognition.
So I think this could be the first year that a defensive lineman or outside linebacker doesn't win the award, or a linebacker. There's actually a couple DBs. Hoyt, that's how you say it. Yeah. Hoyt.
Thank you.
Give some respect to my man Hoyt. He's been balling. There's been a lot of defensive backs, more specifically safeties, that have been. I'm trying to think, when's the last safety that won it? Was it the Ed Reed, maybe?
Oh, man.
Did win it.
I know Mika should have won it that one year.
I couldn't even tell you.
But when you look at it, I think me and Mike have the same guy. Brian Branch has been ridiculous for the Detroit Lions this year. The way that they move him around from slot to safety. Also, I mean, he got kicked out for it, but the aggression that he plays with, which again, I don't think there was. Yeah, I didn't think there was real intent there.
Go in his pocket.
It was definitely a flaggable offense, but it was not throwing out of the game offense. I thought that was ridiculous. But the crazy thing is, it wasn't like Detroit missed him a beat, which is insane to say, right? Because we're putting him in the defensive player of the year category. I mean, Kirby Joseph is tied for the most interceptions in all of football right now. But I love the way Brian Branch has played. Another guy, Jesse Bates, I think 5 total turnovers. He just has a knack for finding the football, man. Like, the way he's played this year has been like just out of this world. And then another guy that people haven't really talked about that had a crazy streak in the beginning of the year, Xavier McKinney. At safety. 6. And he's tied right now with Kirby Joseph for interceptions. I mean, the range, and I had never understood what the Giants were thinking. Like, they could have probably transition tagged him, which I hate that as a player. Like, I want my guys to get paid. But, like, for you to let a guy go that's 24 years old, right? He's younger than most guys coming out of the draft right now, with so much upside, and people were like, "Oh, the Packers overpaid." No, they didn't. They might have underpaid for this guy. Like, the range he showed at the safety position, especially when they drafted so many young safeties that literally have to look up to him, and he has to teach them the game. Like, you can't put a price tag on that. Like, Xavier McKinney, this could be a year that a safety wins Defensive Player of the Year.
I think with the rise of these too high defenses, just like everyone living in too high shells, really separates the safeties with instinctual play on the back end.
Correct.
The guys who can, because you're having to read a lot when you're in too high versus like a single high defense. Single high defense, you're like a placeholder. You're like that guy who's just on the back end. And if some guy comes into your lane, you're picking him up. But in a 2-high, you're reading concepts. And if you can break on those quicker, that's how you get 6 picks like Xavier McKinney. That's how you get 4 picks and 6 pass breakups like Brian Branch. So I'm in agreement that some of these safeties, Jesse Bates as well, like they're rising to the cream of the crop at that position because they just see the game faster than other people. And to me, Branch is like 1A on that list with just the plays he's made. I go back to the 2-point conversion against, what was it? The Rams, the one that ended up, was it the Rams? It was a few weeks ago. It was the Vikings. Okay, that ended up being the difference in that game.
Correct.
It was just a play where he's passing one route off to pick up another route in Jordan Addison, and he did it just in the blink of an eye. And that's the reason it wasn't successful, right? It's any other guy in that situation. 99.9% of the rest of the NFL at safety ain't making that play. And those are game-changing plays. Those are plays that win you football games in the NFL.
His understanding of route concepts is what impressed me at Alabama, which why I had him at the back of the first, even though he was a safety / nickel. I actually did a breakdown on him for us at CBS, and I was like, the guy just recognizes route concepts, whether he's in the slot or safety position. To your point, I don't think there's a better guy right now being able to pass routes off and then break on an in-breaking route behind it than Brian Branch right now. So, I mean, this is what I was talking about earlier when you talk about Aaron Glenn and his defense. People were wondering what are they going to do without Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, he finally feels like he has some guys in the back end. If anybody knows guys in the back end, it's him.
Yep.
He's a guy that played at a Pro Bowl level in the back end, right? So, like, he finally feels like he has his guys. When you talk about, getting Carlton Davis, Brian Branch in his second year, Kirby Joseph, right? Terrion Arnold, who has had some ups and downs and struggles, even getting Ennis Rakestraw in there, right? A few reps a game, right? They finally feel like they have a secondary that can hold up, even though they don't have their star defensive player in Aiden Hutchinson. He's going to bring some pressure and put those guys on islands, and he feels comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I do love watching that back end of the Detroit Lions defense. And now they have some pass rush to go with it. All right, let's get to Offensive Player of the Year, where again,
I think it's unanimous.
3.
Offensive Player of the Year or MVP?
Offensive Player of the Year.
1, 2, 3. Derrick Henry.
I mean, the guy has over 1,000 yards in 9 games. Yeah. Like, everybody was talking about his age. He might slow down. Like, I guarantee the Dallas Cowboys are kicking themselves because supposedly he would have took a discount to go there because he lives in the area and trains there all off season.
The only point I agree with Jerry Jones on is the fact that he probably wouldn't have had that success in Dallas. That's what I agree with.
I think that's
When you have Lamar Jackson opens things up,
he still would have had success.
I think he would have still probably had like 700 yards.
1,000%. And now with Cooper Rush in there, they're begging for a running back. But at the end of the day, Derrick Henry, what he's able to do is so impressive all the time. The things that it opens up at the mesh point on the second level of the defense, the strain it puts on the defense, it's just unbelievable. He's been incredible again.
6.3 yards per carry, 1,052 yards, 11 rushing touchdowns. That's 3 more than any other player in the NFL.
If Nico Collins stayed healthy,
he could have been, because he was averaging what?
He was 6 weeks in and he had 567 yards.
I can't wait for him to come back. He's different.
He would have been in the mix, but there's really no wide receiver going like. The last few years we've had Tyreek,
but this was the true X
challenging that.
This was the 2000s. This was the year 2006 receiver position out there with CJ Stroud.
I think Nico was on trajectory for like 1,800, and even that was still astronomical. But to Mike's point, like, I think I'm doing a segment with Pete later. I was trying to think. I'm like, receiver wise, like like obviously Chase is up there, Justin Jefferson. But I'm like, who's the third guy right now? You know what I'm saying? Because
Nico.
Even with injury, right?
It's like when we used to look at those Ravens.
Chris Godwin probably before the injury.
How many yards does Derrick Henry have still after injury?
Exactly.
Remember we look at those stats?
He was still like leading for like 4 weeks, which is insane.
So now we go Coach of the Year.
Coach of the Year. Wait, I want to hit one more thing about Derrick Henry. If he gets 2,000 yards, say he breaks the rushing record, it's in play at this point. I mean, he's on pace to be right in that mix.
Fit him for his jacket.
Does he have a chance to win the MVP?
I think that's going to hurt them. Is him and Lamar are going to probably cancel each other?
No, because Lamar has played better than he has ever played before.
He's playing out of his mind.
He's a 2-time MVP that is trying to take his team to the Super Bowl this year for the first time. I really think that you can't make you got to give it the Offensive Player of the Year to Derrick Henry. You have to give the MVP to the quarterback because, in my opinion, there's no position with more value than the quarterback. Nobody that gives more value to their team, maybe Jaden Daniels outside of Lamar Jackson.
I mean, but there was an argument to be made last year. The Giants, Saquon was more valuable than Daniel Jones.
But yes. Yes. You know what? Yes. Yeah. But in this situation,
you're right. It's Lamar.
I was watching this Ravens offense and watching specifically, Mark Andrews the other day. And I'm like, Mark Andrews hasn't taken a step back at all. Like, he's not getting featured in the offense.
They just have options.
They just have the most options I've seen.
Likely doesn't even touch the ball.
Yeah. Mark Andrews still looks like a top 5 tight end in the NFL. Yeah. They just don't have to use him.
I think Likely would be a top 10 if he got the ball.
Yeah.
After the toe went out in Kansas City, they were like, hey, buddy, just.
It was crazy. He went off that week 1. Yep. And then it was like, dang, y'all forgot y'all got this literal
and I remember
Avenger over here you're not using.
You got Mark Andrews, you're not throwing it to him. And then I remember the first time they threw to Mark Andrews, he dropped it. And everybody was like, oh God. And now Andrews.
This is why they use him as a blocker.
Yeah. Stupid.
All right, let's do coach of the year before we get to MVP.
1, 2.
I think it's different for all 3 of us.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Andy
Reid.
Dan Campbell.
Andy Reid's a good. I do. The only other thing about Andy Reid, and again, it's like he's the offensive head coach, and their offense has not been.
But here's the deal.
From a coaching perspective,
you've got so much more that you're dealing with in Kansas City 100%. When you're Andy Reid. Not only is your quarterback the most famous guy in the league, outside of his tight end, who's dating the most famous person in the world, outside of a football team who's won the last 2 Super Bowls, the expectations are at an all-time high. And then you lose your running back. And then you lose your true number 1 receiver in Rashee Rice. And then you're scrambling to figure out an offensive identity. And then you're okay with changing your identity as a coach and running the football more. I give him a tremendous amount of credit for keeping these guys focused, keeping things in-house all the time in Kansas City. That's one thing we never hear. And they just keep – they're undefeated.
Yeah. I think people, when it comes to – we talked about this earlier, like when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, people are starting to treat them like the Patriots when Tom Brady was there. And people feel like maybe it's just overkill every year, Andy Reid, which, again, he's the best coach in the league. He could win this award every single year. Yep. To your point, the way they've been able to evolutionize themselves in regards to changing up some philosophies, changing up personnel being hurt and bringing in new personnel. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, we literally did a clip just 2 weeks ago saying, like, yeah, he's not going to be the same guy, but he's going to be a guy that's going to get an influx of energy. He's going to be a viable piece for Patrick Mahomes. And what did he do on Monday Night Football? 2 touchdowns, right? A ridiculous contested catch. And I said, it's funny how when guys go to a winning team, they get an influx of energy and they revert back to who they used to be, right? And sure enough, that's exactly what he did. So kudos to Andy Reid always. He's going to be at the top of the list. To me, he's the best coach in the NFL, but I look at what Dan Campbell is. I think he got shafted last year for the award. Should have won it last year because all the expectations coming off of what Detroit had been for so many years. And they go, I believe, what is it?
Since 1953.
Literally, they go 9-8, knock the Packers out of the playoffs in the 2022 season. Coming into 23, so many expectations. People thrust them up to the top in the NFC North. I was one of them, exceeded expectations. Literally, if Dan Campbell was probably not as aggressive versus the San Francisco 49ers.
They blew a 3-possession lead.
They're probably in the Super Bowl, right? And then look at this year, right? Some people are saying, even though the Chiefs are undefeated, that the Lions are still the better team right now. So, like, what Dan Campbell has been able to do, and then case in point, right? They lost their kind of face of the franchise in Aiden Hutchinson, and yet they keep winning games, and not just winning, blowing people out. It's not even close. So I think Dan Campbell got shafted last year. He shouldn't get shafted this year. But I do like Mike's choice as well.
I like Mike Tomlin. I put him because I think he made the biggest decision of any head coach this year to bench a guy who was successful at quarterback for someone else, and it paid off big dividends the past 2 weeks. Obviously, with big wins against the Jets, Giants, not 2 games that were in hand prior to that. That I think if Justin Fields was out there, weren't necessarily locks that they were going to win it. So what he's done,
big one this week.
And again, everyone's raving about the Ravens. Steelers top the North. They only have 2 losses this year. So I do think, and when I watch them on tape, that team is very much for real. And his side of the ball, defense side of the ball, is dominating. So I think he's right in that mix.
And they just got deeper.
There's just really, at this point, I don't think there's any going wrong with either of those 3. We didn't have this one down, but executive of the year, anyone you guys like for that?
Brett Veach.
I would say Brad Holmes.
Holmes could win it with the last 3 years. Just his draft track record.
Correct.
Unbelievable.
Brett Veach brought back in a guy from the 2016 team to play running back when all their running backs went down. They had a guy who looked like
he's been cooking too.
They had a guy who looked like Pocket Hercules. Actually, a white dude, Carson. He's out there running the football. They say he's a running back. He's a fullback. That's what he is. So they bring in Kareem Hunt. He's great. I remember when the receivers went down, they go and get Jody Fortson, who's a tight end you might not even know, but he's a really good player. He was a third tight end there in 2021. He was a rookie out of Kennesaw State. They brought him back from, I believe, Miami early in the season, and now Andy Reid rolls out there with 3 tight end sets, and they just find a way to make it happen. You go get DeAndre Hopkins. This is all Brett Veach stuff, man. This is all Brett Veach stuff.
How much of an Executive of the Year award? Because obviously in the NFL, you make a play like drafting Patrick Mahomes, and it's like, okay, yeah, you could win it every single year with that position, right? With what you did there. But how much does it have to be about like this last calendar year? Or is it about
that's a good question.
How much you've done over the last 3 or 4 years? Because
that's a good question, because I think Adam Peters deserves to be in this conversation.
Yes, because if it's this calendar year.
They flipped it.
Yeah. He literally flipped that roster in one calendar year, to your point, right? When you talk about how they revamped the defense now, people were wondering how it would look in the beginning of the year. Had some struggles, but they've started to come along, and it's because a lot of those players take on the personality of Dan Quinn. And Adam Peters knew, like, I need guys that are going to want to fight or run through a brick wall for Dan Quinn. And then obviously when you get the quarterback right, that helps a lot as well. But even the offensive line, like protecting that young guy, getting guys like Tyler Biadasz. I mean, the Coleman kid from TCU has been an amazing pick. He played really well the last couple games. So shout out to my guy, Adam Peters. I actually texted him the other day when some Lattimore thing. I said, bro, keep cooking, because you cooking right now. He's done an amazing job for the Commanders.
I gave a shout out to Brian Gutekunst too. Packers.
Yeah, he's done it.
Trading for Malik Willis.
That Malik Willis trade was amazing.
One of the best moves. Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs, both home run free agency additions there for them. So MVP, last award. 1, 2, 3.
Lamar Jackson.
It's just good. How do you get better? How do you be Lamar Jackson, play a different game than everybody else in the NFL, and then find a way to get better? And I don't even know what year it is. Year 8, something like that
7,
for Lamar. Year 7. Yeah. And the guy's still getting better.
Crazy.
And he's one of those guys that we looked at the beginning and we said, how long can he last physically doing what he – not only has he lasted, he's gotten better at it. He's gotten smarter with it. He's processing faster. He's trusting protection, even when protection isn't there. He's incredible. He's the MVP.
Yes, to put some numbers to it, he's 3rd right now in passing yards, 2nd in passing touchdowns, 1st in yards per attempt by over a half a yard, and he's 2nd in interceptions with only 2. So,
if I'm not mistaken, I think he's top 12 in rushing.
Yeah. And then, oh, by the way, he has, I believe, the most rushing yards of any quarterback in the NFL this season. 505 yards, on pace for 1,000 yards.
That's crazy. Just to put this in perspective, Vance Joseph and his Denver defense had literally been cooking a lot of quarterbacks. They put a lot of quarterbacks in the blender this season, right? Aaron Rodgers, a few other quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud, a couple other quarterbacks. And his thing was the whole week, he was like, you know, you get to take away a run or pass. He was like, when we're playing Baltimore, I want to take away the run. Nor Lamar Jackson goes out and does perfect passer rating.
Was he
16 to 19? Like, come on. Like, you talked about, like, how can you continuously get better? Lamar has shown from within the pocket, he can process faster. He can beat you. To me, I always like Lamar. I like Lamar Jackson to like Burger King. BK.
Have it your way.
Have it your way. You rule, right? Like, he can beat you in so many different manners. Like, all right, we're going to take away the pass. All right, I'm going to run for 150 yards and make sure Derrick Henry runs for 200 yards. All right, I can beat you with a combination of the two, running the football and throwing the football. It's just like he's on easy street when he's out there. He's never, like, rushed or, like, they never force him to speed up his process. Like, even when you feel like you have him wrapped up in a funnel, he's just looking at you like, you can't tackle me, dude. Like, you can't tackle me. It's just ridiculous what he's done. The jump he's made from within the pocket this year is absurd. And also, shout out to Todd Monken, right? For him to, like, be second year in this system and really relish in the system. You can tell he's more comfortable this year than he was last year in that system.
And the adjustments they made early in the season, they were such a liability at the offensive line. It was like,
oh my God.
We came in here and we just almost laughed the Ravens out of the
First 2 weeks,
building.
it was bad.
And they found a way to do it, dude. Yeah. And a lot of it is because of Lamar Jackson.